It's week 4. That means first round of our power rankings, 1/4 through the season, about a third of the way through the regular season. Checking in where the teams stand. Now, of course, the standings, they are a guide that we use, but they are not the end all be all on where teams are trending, where injuries are looking at, if you'd want to play them heads up, and how we think they will do in the playoffs. So that's why Bonzo comes here with his power rankings. Slim Pickens at 12. This is the easiest pick on the whole thing. I mean, there's a clear separation between this team and the rest of the league. Lowest points scored, 0 and 4. And if you look at this roster, there's not a single player on this roster who is a starter on other teams in the league for sure, besides Christian Kirk. I think most other teams in the league, Christian Kirk will be a bona fide starter. Everybody else on this team is like a flex play, maybe. That's not what you like to see. The New England running backs are inflated this week because they're going up against Detroit. Most weeks, you're not going to have a projected 26 between the two of them. It's going to be more like a 20-ish. And they have a cap ceiling together. It's just awful. Gibson, with Brian Robinson coming back, ETN's been terrible. And yeah, I predicted this team to be 12th. As you can see there in the parentheses, 12th was my prediction, and they're still at 12. Broncos country coming in at 11. Now, this is one of my biggest misses. This is my biggest miss because I had this team in the top 4. I don't know if they'll finish at 11 because it's not too ugly, but like Zach Wilson or Geno Smith as the starting QB, that's not that good. He lost Javonte, so he's starting Miles Sanders, which means then his flex, he's got to play like Juju or Lockett or Lazard every week. 14 points projected for Lockett is a lot. I know he's been doing all right to start the year, but I don't know. Not someone I love at wide receiver, too. AJ Brown is a wide receiver 1, and Derrick Henry is an RB1, but I think just the tight end and the flex is just tough for this squad. Very tough for it. I don't know if it'll finish at 11. I would say it might finish at 8 or 9, but I think that Javonte being hurt might have scratched this team's playoff hopes. Um, and there's a reason for it. Second lowest points for 1 and 3. Can't be excited about anything. C minus draft grade. Now I had them preseason as 11, and they're 10. Hopped over Charlie here. I think that Clyde and James Robinson have been very surprising, good things for this squad, right? Of course, you see they're kind of like I said, you got to sit Brandon Cooks now that Godwin's back. Cooks is one of the better players, would be a starter on most teams, but this team's limited at it. Freiermuth has been surprisingly good. Trevor Lawrence has been surprisingly good. Like a lot of things going trending up for this team. I wouldn't project Curtis Samuel to keep it going all year. I wouldn't project Clyde and James Robinson to be both top 10 RBs the rest of the year. And also, it just speaks to the fact that even with all these players sort of outperforming, they're still lower end in points for, and they're still 0-4. So they got a lot of volatility. Um, I'm pretty sure he didn't start Samuel on his 2 pop weeks. And now he's finally starting Samuel, and, he's trending downwards. So tough sledding for this team to start 0-4. Probably deserves to be 1-2 or 2-2. But that it is what it is, and I don't think you're that scared of going up against this team in any given week. Jamar's been disappointing. Debo's been doing all right. He had that big pop week, but before then, I mean, look at that. Not something you want out of your second rounder. He finally showed up this week with the big play. But tough spot for this team. I still think it's not a playoff team. Deshaun's innocent. Okay, another team. Like, hey, they're 2-2, but they're lower in points scored, right? McCaffrey is coming back. This team is trending up, so that's why I have them at 9. They've rose a little since the preseason ranks. He's been dealing with the Keenan Allen injury. Brees Hall's ascending. I don't know about Kittle, the 45th tight end, considering he missed the first 2 weeks, and now his last 2 weeks he scored 10 points. Um, this bench is not deep. This team, the starting lineup looks good now that Brees is ascending, but like Bateman might be hurt this week. Who's he putting in for him? Tyler Algier, Julio, not someone you want to be excited about. Olave is ascending too. I mean, kind of trending up for this team. Some of his rookies are popping. Will Keenan get back to form? Is Brady going to be okay? Kittle, it's not like this team is terrible. I think there's a big clumpage of teams here from power ranking 10 to power ranking 4-ish. I just had to put this team near the bottom for now because of their points scored and because they've just got too many question marks. Muffins is dropped from power ranking 8 to power ranking 5. Now, this seems fourth in the standings, so that's weird to see, right? But look at those points for middle to lower. I think it's probably eighth or seventh. Taylor dealing with the injury now, and he's just been bad. Elijah Moore and DJ Moore at the flex. Deontay Johnson. This team's got weak wide receivers. Maybe the weakest in the league. I'd have to go through and check that. But when you have the weakest wide receivers in the league, or some of the weakest, plus you have, RBs who are underperforming their draft price. Remember, I was out on James Conner to start the year. This guy isn't good. Not something you want to be starting. A low end RB3. And Taylor has not been the stud you drafted him to be. So when you got weaker wide receivers and your RBs aren't performing, what's there to be happy about? Cortland Sutton, Dallas Goedert, and Herbert? I mean, I guess. Um, but, I'm having a little more faith in this team and keeping them at eighth because when Taylor's back, maybe they'll be better. But I wouldn't be surprised if this team trends downward even more. Had to give them a little respect with the 3 wins so far, but I think they're trending down, not up in the following weeks. Hot seat, another team I sort of missed on here. Coob's team. He's made a lot of trades, to be fair. Since I ranked this team, he's made a lot of trades. So that's why I've dropped him here. I think if he just had his original roster, I might be feeling better about it because he had Russell Wilson. Remember, he had Sutton. He had Dalvin Cook. He didn't have Chubb or Waddle. But, Cook had a bounce back week. I think Sutton's value just went up with the Javonte injury. Maybe Russ throws more. He had his best week this week. Um, what do I think about this team? What am I supposed to do? This is a fringe playoff team, or it's not. It's 1-3. It does have decent points for, but I just don't know what to think. It's just clumped together, right? With all these teams who are middle of the road, it's going to kind of come down to luck of scheduling, and that's all I have to say about it. What more do I say? It's kind of even with all the few teams below it, and it's kind of even with the few teams above it. Indy's Cheeks, one of those teams, right? Um, it's doing good. It's doing better than I projected. The Hawkinson definitely has popped for this team. Last week got it a win. I believe it got it a win. And Mark Andrews has been great. Jeff Wilson was a great pickup. Najee has been a bad pick, just a bad pick, right? But he's sort of being carried by these other guys who are popping. Evans, when he's been on the field, has been really good. Last week had a pop week, of course. The bench is kind of shallow, but I'm going to clump him, because of some of the ascension, because of just out of respect of Hurts, Andrews, and Evans. I'm going to put this team here at 6. Again, I think it's just about as good as the 3 teams below it and the 2 or 3 teams above it. Detrimentally horny. Okay. So this team, look at that. 4-0 and at the top of the ranks. But look at those points for 445. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams with higher points for than this team, and you've got a bunch of other ones clumped right around 430. So we're talking about fractions. We're talking about a difference of 1 or 2 points a week. This team is, and he just sits at the middle of the league, sort of. Why don't I like this roster and not too excited about it? Of course, I have it 5. I have it as a playoff team, but he's relying on Melvin Gordon and Kareem Hunt. Yeah, Melvin will get a bump now that Javonte's out, but it's not like Javonte was being a crazy stud. Melvin could be washed. He's been fumbling like crazy. Not someone I want as my RB1. I'm giving this team a little more respect because Hopkins is coming back, but Kamara's been bad. Devontae Adams and DK, I guess you get excited about those two. You're not excited about the tight end. Of course, you love Allen, but, if he throws to other people in Dawson Knox and McKenzie, which you'd think he would, you'd think Gabe Davis and Diggs will get those targets. I mean, it's not the second best team in the league. You'll look at the next few rosters we go through and you'll say, oh yeah, those teams are better. Of course, he could have Swift coming back. He could have Hopkins coming back. But right now, looking at this, I think he's trotting out an ugly starting lineup. Maybe that'll change in a few weeks. I'll have to eat my words if his team is 7-1, or 8-0. But I'll project more of a trending to 6-2, or even a 5-3 when we check back with this team. I'd have to look at the matchups. Matters what the matchups are too. But I think it's the fourth best team or fifth best team. I don't think it's, the second best or first best. Draft night ghost. Now let's look at this roster. Okay, Eckler bounced back. Lenny's been great. I take that back. He's not been great. He's been about what you expected. He had a good week last week. He's been consistent. Tyreek, wide receiver three. He's been a stud. Mike Williams. Um, he's been doing pretty well. I like where he's trending. Waller, you can do worse at tight end. Um, and then when I look at the flex spots, gosh, as I'm analyzing this, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Um, this team is fifth. Yep, this team is below Mark's. I'm sorry, Mark. Your team is actually fourth because this team is not as good. Um, had a pop week last week, but this team is not as good as Mark's team going forward, especially when Hopkins and Swift come back. It's still good. I still have it as a playoff team. As you can see, I kind of spoiled it there. Uh, I got Ravenslock at third. The third in the standings. Lamar has been amazing. Um, Diggs has been amazing. You got the quarterback one and the wide receiver two. Mixon has been fine. He's been getting the work. He's been fine. AJ Dillon kind of underperforming. Devontae Smith, boomer bust. Gabe Davis has been banged up. Pitts has been terrible, but Dobbins is back. Dobbins all the way back, and this team has earned its 3-1 record. When you look at the points for, right? It is at the third in the league, just by a hair, and it's sort of ascending. Dobbins coming back, had a really down week last week. Nobody scoring touchdowns. But I'm not going to rank this team below third just because some of its players have been volatile. I think better days are coming. Each of them have had flashes of what they can be. So I'm confident that this team will maintain this ranking spot. The team that I have above it is the Implication. Now, the Implication's sitting down here at fifth because he's got two losses. He's had a tough schedule, but he's a clear lead for second most points in the league, or first most points in the league, sorry, at 618. He's just had some bad matchups. CD has been good without Cooper Rush. Mahomes to Kelsey, that stack is looking dangerous. Zeke and Jacobs are fine at RB. Like they're both middle of the road. Well, sorry, Jacobs has been RB7 because he had a career week last week. So that helped him for sure. But this team's wide receivers are strong, tight end strong, quarterback strong. He's just missing running backs. So I've got to put him up there. I've got to put him up there. Jefferson, CD, Marquise Brown have all been outperforming, uh, where they were drafted, sort of thing. Kelsey's been great. Mahomes has been great. I can't rank this team lower than two. And Sim for Sarah, I got him ranked one. He's 4-0. Little less points for than Troy's team, but I think he's been a little bit more consistent. And just going forward, like I'm more scared of Barkley, Cook, Pittman, London, Cup, Higgins. I mean, that's a stellar RB and wide receiver core. And then he's got the Kyler Murray at QB, it feels like Kyler's been bad and he's still QB8. Ertz has been serviceable, tight end four. You wouldn't expect it, but Ertz is tight end four. Look at this. Only two touchdowns, too. It's not like he's tight end four because he's got four touchdowns. He's got two touchdowns. He's averaging around 5 catches a game. That's what you want out of a tight end. So you can't even say tight end is weak for this team. At one point, I thought the bench was really, really deep. Now I look at it and I'm like, I don't know. I guess the bench is fine. Uh, Not amazing. He's sort of taken some flyers there, which is what you should do with a team of this caliber bench, but got to put it at the top of the league for right now. So those are your rankings. And see how everyone reacted to, or how everyone sort of moved from what I originally had them. So far, been a lot of movement. Been a lot of movement. We'll see how the end of the season shakes out. I sort of missed big on my fourth ranked team there. The third ranked team, kind of, I had them as top four, and now they're sort of sitting out of playoff contention. Kind of hit it with the top two, still have them ranked in the top three. Mark's team and Troy's teams, the early surprise, Indy's Cheeks as well, a little bit of an early surprise, but there have been a lot of trades. I think all three of those teams have made trades um, and made their teams a little better from it. So good for those owners. And yeah, that's how I rank the teams right now. Be interesting to see how the rest of the season shakes out. How similar am I to ESPN? ESPN has Mark's team higher than I have them. They have Jake at number one. They've got my team a little lower than I ranked it. John O's team, that is. The implication, it's got up there. It's got Draft Night Ghost up there. I didn't even look at this. I don't know. I wasn't using this as a guide. I'm just curious to see what the analytics think. Wow, they've got a hot seat as a playoff team. I mean, I've got them on the fringe. Like I said, I think teams, 5 through 10, you're just looking at a cluster of who's going to make those last two playoff spots.